All right, news analyst Dr. Amadi joins us now. Dr. Amadi, thank you so much for being here. And of course, you know, the issue of coal was a big issue going into this conference. 2 weeks after, we saw a phase down, but not a phase out. Let's talk about how this really affects the African continent, especially countries like Nigeria that is still heavily dependent on fossil fuel and to a certain extent coal.
Well, basically, I mean, one can argue that the language, the text on coal probably is the best you get. When India, China put out strong resistance. Again, if you look at, in fact, India wanted a language that talked about inefficient. So, by the end of the China's version, which was phased down, came in. Now, what that means, for example, is that these countries will continue to use coal to generate power, but then draw down, phase down, meaning gradually they roll in renewable. One can argue that it's probably a much more reasonable approach for countries that are so dependent on coal. Don't forget that the crisis of this negotiation is that you're dealing with development as well as with the ecology. So if you're some kind of, things call themselves. For example, if you're going to be aggressive in transitioning to clean energy, for example, you're going to have to lose some degree of energy for industrialization. And so the language of phasing down, even though disappointing environmentalists and those who care so much because of the capacity of coal to generate greenhouse emission at a very large quantity. But essentially what we've seen is that South Africa, for example, bilateral by the side, was able to get up to how many billions of dollars support for helping them to move out of coal quickly. Again, this is not part of the agreement, but this is bilateral. The UK, about 5 countries, the UK, the US, the EU, France, and a few other, about 5 countries came together and put that commitment to South Africa. So in other words, basically, most of these countries will continue. And then the problem with most of these, if they're not so clear-cut with timelines, then it might become a moving object. So people keep on, doing what they're doing.
I really was going to ask that question, that there is no timeline, the phase down the rest. One of the biggest commitments from China was that it wasn't going to develop new coal mines and the rest, and that's kind of put paid to probably Nigeria's own huge deposit.
And that's the problem, and our coal is actually supercritical, which is seen as cleaner. Cleaner. So the question is, what will Nigeria do with this massive coal
deposit? That runs through the southeast trough, even up to the north,
Kogi and all that.
The lower savannas and what have you. But my question here again is that of financing. $100 billion committed by COP26 between 2021 and 2025 by developed countries, and that should go up from 2025 and above. But Africa lost out because not one penny is committed to regeneration of the environment.
Well, that's the issue around cost mitigation and remediation. Now, what they are trying to do, in Paris Agreement, there was a general commitment about $200 billion. Now they are talking about generally again about 200 billion. So that's why I say some will. But again, what Africa wanted, especially those countries that are going to be impacted, especially countries in the Pacific as well, like Maldives, like Fiji Island, that are impacted now, that are facing something close to environmental, climatic tragedy. They just want something they want to have now. They would like to have maybe a quicker, something like phase out coal to help them. Again, they also want financial support for them to rebuild resilience and provide alternatives and cope with this crisis. So one can argue really that unexpectedly, it's always difficult. All the environmental facilities, financing that has been agreed over the years, none of the developed countries have ever measured up to their commitment. So when it comes to support, you see pledges, but you don't see clear commitment in terms of this amount of money has been put in. So after COP26, are we going to see a better financing of this intervention? Again, the good thing about this is that they say next year there will be some kind of actions taken.
And we should start seeing actions in the next coming months.
So they track what's going on and perhaps we'll see whether that will be.
Well, Dr. Amadi, let's look at the fact that, the issue that targets were not set, exact dates, unlike what we had in the 2015 Paris Agreement, where we saw the net zero emissions by 2050 and all of those agreements come up and all of that. But let's look at this. It's looking like that even the 2050 is not even looking likely, because countries like Nigeria, even going into the summit, had argued that different timelines should be given, and it looks like that was achieved. So generally, would you say this summit, the outcomes actually favors countries like us?
Well, it's a reverse argument. People argue that we are the worst hit by climatic, problems. For example, flooding,
substitutions,
everything.
The issue
So,
of
so that
deforestation.
even if we don't get financial support, that ultimately, being aggressive in controlling, greenhouse emission, use of methane and all that, will help us stave off these tragedies. But on the short term, these countries like Nigeria want some support, some kind of economic. It has been a debate around development. So people have gone before. They want to remove the leader so that you don't go. So pay us off. It's like give us an incentive to slow down all
you have developed your own nation
exactly,
using
so that we can
the same
create
technology.
a balance. So the countries like Nigeria and the rest of the world will deal with the crisis of how would they develop at the same industrializing rate if they are going to engage in fossil fuel, reducing fossil fuel and coal. For example, renewable, the technology, even though the price is going down, we need to ramp up, we need to provide policy framework, and then we are going to phase them in gradually. South Africa, for example, in the last 1 decade, the last 10 years, they have been doing that small. They don't even have enough of the renewable with their sophistication. Their electricity market is more sophisticated, but they don't have any significant renewable portfolio that if they do a drastic withdrawal from coal, they may not have, already they're suffering shortage.
They are
so there's going to be a problem for
shortage,
countries
yes.
like Africa, African countries that don't have the capacity and who need to aggressively utilize fossil fuel like those gas producers, Angola, Nigeria, and those who have coal like South Africa.
Let me quickly ask you a double-barrel question here. When you look at the couples of the resolutions, from the COP26, and you look at how China and India tones down certain language,
especially India.
Yeah. Do you think that the resolutions of COP26, the communique, are they capable of, saving the world's climatologically? That's one. And two, how achievable then would you say is the 1.5 degrees Celsius reduction of or limiting global warming to that level?
Well, the first question is that clearly, like the Antonio Guterres, the UN Secretary General, puts clear. It says it shows the contradiction of politics, the conflict, and lack of political will. But primarily, the takeaway, like John Kerry says, that look, we've been able to mention by name coal. We've mentioned by name this. We never mentioned it by name. So that means the world has taken a position against coal. And then said drawdown. So the people argue that look, this is disappointing, but for the first time we've fingered the problem. We need to really. That's why Boris Johnson says this is the death knell for coal. Now, what people argue, and those who expected bigger action, and those from the Pacific countries say, look, you should have been more aggressive. So it's half cup, half full, half empty. So I would say, if you compare the thing about diplomacy, once language enters and some general commitments, you can build on it. Now, the second question around, how Africans will do it, it's a matter of what happens post COP26.
All right. Okay, let's just hope for the best. And let's just hope for the best. And of course, there will still be more meetings on environmental matters. Dr. Sam Amadi, a RISE analyst and a lawyer.